The objective for this lesson is to compare two decimals to the hundredths place. In previous lessons, students have written and modeled decimals to the hundredths. Students have also generated equivalent fractions with denominators of 10 and 100 for decimal numbers to the tenths and hundredths. They have also compared whole numbers using the symbols greater than, less than, or equal to. Let's start by comparing decimals using a number line. The first set of decimals to compare are 53 hundredths and 35 hundredths. Start by finding 53 hundredths and make a mark and label it on the number line. Next, find 35 hundredths and make a mark and label it on the number line. 53 hundredths is to the right of 35 hundredths and is therefore a larger amount. The correct symbol would be greater than. 53 hundredths is greater than 35 hundredths. Let's try another set of numbers. 2 and 8 hundredths compared to 2 and 7 tenths. Start by finding 2 and 8 hundredths on the number line and make a mark. Pay careful attention to find 2 and 8 hundredths and not 2 and 8 tenths. Next, find 2 and 7 tenths on the number line and make a mark. 2 and 8 hundredths is to the left or less than 2 and 7 tenths. The correct symbol is less than, so the comparison reads 2 and 8 hundredths is less than 2 and 7 tenths. Now let's compare decimals using a place value chart. The first set of numbers to compare is 29 hundredths and 74 hundredths. Start by writing these numbers in the place value chart. 29 hundredths would be written as a 2 in the tenths column and a 9 in the hundredths column. 74 hundredths would be written with a 7 in the tenths column and a 4 in the hundredths. The largest place value is the tenths, so let's start with the tenths to compare. 29 hundredths has a 2 in the tenths, and 74 hundredths has a 7 in the tenths. 2 is less than 7, so 29 hundredths is less than 74 hundredths. Let's compare another set of numbers, 1 and 35 hundredths, and 1 and 3 tenths. 1 and 35 hundredths would be written with a 1 in the ones column, a 3 in the tenths column, and a 5 in the hundredths column. 1 and 3 tenths would be written with a 1 in the ones column and a 3 in the tenths column. The largest place value is the ones place. Both numbers have a 1 in the ones column, so move on to the tenths column. Both numbers have a 3 in the tenths column, so move on to the hundredths. The first number has a 5 in the hundredths column, and the second number does not have any hundredths. 5 hundredths are more than no hundredths. So 1 and 35 hundredths is greater than 1 and 3 tenths. When comparing decimals, make sure that the decimals are written in the correct place value or placed in the correct spot on the place value chart or number line. Let's go over a few misconceptions students may have about comparing decimal numbers. The first one is, a longer decimal is greater than a shorter decimal. Students may think 38 hundredths is greater than 7 tenths because a whole number with more digits is greater than a whole number with less digits. For example, 38 is greater than 7. A second misconception is that a shorter decimal is greater than a longer decimal. Students may think that 4 tenths is greater than 88 hundredths because each column to the right of the decimal point results in a smaller size portion than the previous columns. Therefore, tenths are larger size pieces than hundredths. A third misconception that students may incorrectly apply whole number place value knowledge to decimals. They know that 250 is the same as 25 tens. Therefore, incorrectly conclude that 0.25 is the same as 25 tenths. A fourth misconception is that students may incorrectly compare decimals to the 0, thinking that 0 is greater than 42 hundredths, because 0 is a whole number in the ones column, and 42 hundredths is a decimal number, meaning it is less than a whole. The last misconception is that students may think 3 tenths is greater than 8 tenths, relating the decimals to 1/3 and 1/8 instead of 3 tenths and 8 tenths. They know that sharing with 3 results in a larger piece than sharing with 8 and making an incorrect comparison. Help your student make correct conceptual models to help them have greater understanding for decimals. The objective for this lesson was to compare two decimals to the hundredths place. We met this objective by comparing sets of decimals using a number line and a place value chart. We use the symbols greater than, less than, or equal to compare the sets of numbers.